Hello, everyone. Welcome to Speak Up, Sis Talk Radio, the show where Christian authors share their stories through their books to inspire you to speak up and share your own story. I'm your host, author Angel Charmaine. Today, I've invited author Gin Noon Spaulding into the space to interview her about her very unique children's book series entitled The Adventures of Lily. She talks about sensory issues within this book series. Let me tell you, I know you all have witnessed the mom in the grocery store or even at church with a child who's screaming for seemingly nothing. Well, guess what? Jen is going to share a very new perspective with us so that maybe we can have just a little more empathy for that parent and that child when we see these types of things happen. So let's welcome author Gin Noon Spaulding to Speak Up Sis Talk Radio. Hello, Jen, and welcome to Speak Up Sis Talk Radio. It is so good to have you in the space. How are you doing today?
I am well and so grateful and thankful that you are having me here today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Such an honor.
You're welcome. So, listeners, I know you all wouldn't know this, but Jen and I connected through social media. Like, we connected through Facebook. I like to tell people you don't want to discount the benefits of social media, and you don't want to discount the people you have an opportunity to be connected with on social media, because there are divine connections to be made via Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and the like. So Jen is a fellow author. She's also a Christian. And so, Jen, if you will, please share a little bit about yourself with the listeners before we start talking about your amazing children's book series.
Thank you, Angel. Well, like Angel said, my name is Gin Noon Spaulding, and I am a retired teacher. And I was praying about retirement, and God spoke to me, showed me that it was time for me to retire. And he also laid on my heart to write children's books about sensory issues. My daughter, when she was little, she had sensory issues and a speech delay, and I've always liked to write. So I just went for it and started. I wrote A Miracle at Bates Memorial. That was my first book, and it was an introduction to our family and to Malia, and her nickname is Lily. So the name of the series is called The Adventures of Lily. And so the first book was an introduction. The second book was about sensory issues to light, because she used to hate having her picture taken. So to light. And then the third one was sensory issues to proprioceptive sensory issues. And proprioceptive is your body and space, not really having body awareness. So she could like walk in a room and knock over a whole bunch of stuff and not even realize she did it. Or she could, she didn't like crowds, she didn't like that. And just, she would stomp up the stairs and just not really be aware of her body. Like she was heavy-handed. Like my whole life I was told I was heavy-handed. Now I realize I had proprioceptive sensory issues. So that's a little bit about me. I'm married, and Leah is her name. That we call her Lily. She's our only child, and my books are based on her.
So when you made the decision to go ahead and write children's books, did you already start with did you know you were going to create a series? Or did you just think, I'm just going to write this book and then I'll just write books about different things? Or did you start out knowing that these books would all be connected in a series?
I knew I was going to write a series. When God told me to write books about sensory issues, I was like, wow, that's a great idea. I looked online. There aren't really a lot of books about sensory issues. And I wanted people to understand that your children aren't necessarily bad. They just usually have some type of sensory issue. You've seen, I'm sure you've seen children at a mall and the child is crying and upset. And a lot of times those kids have sensory overload. It's the crowd, it's the light, it's the noise, it's all of that. And, but sensory, a lot of people don't understand what sensory issues are. I'm going to explain. It's like your 5 senses that we have: sight, smell, hear, touch, taste. Okay. And it's where you are oversensitive or undersensitive to the stimuli in your environment. So, so that could be like the nails on the chalkboard would bother a lot of people, that noise, or the food in your mouth doesn't taste quite right. There's something about the texture that's off, or even your clothes. Some children don't feel right in their own clothing. I have a teacher friend who is a reading recovery teacher, and she had a student that was just very inappropriate, very, her behavior was quite off for the regular teacher. But when the little girl came to her room, the first thing she would do is take off her shoes and socks. And so, and then, she let her do it. And, she was able to work with the child. And she said that one day she asked her, what is the first thing you do when you get home? And the little girl said, I take off all my clothes. So the little girl, just being at school every day in clothing, was a huge deal, because evidently she had a sensory issue to touch and clothes bothered her. And so when you have a child like that, you've got to, you find the clothes that they can wear that are comfortable. There are companies now that make super soft clothes. Children with sensory issues to touch, a lot of times they don't like jeans. They don't like stiff clothes. They like the clothes to be worn some, or, softer. I had a student once that liked to wear dirty clothing. And I talked to his mom about it, and she was like, and it didn't hit me until later that it might have been a sensory issue, because she said that he has clean clothes to wear, and he'll choose the dirty ones.
How does
Very interesting.
That is, because let me tell you, one of my sons I used to be like, you just gonna keep wearing these dirty clothes. So tell me, how does that fit in with sensory issues with dirty clothes? Is it because they're worn and comfortable or something like that?
That would be a sensory issue to touch. Now, some people might have a sensory issue. You're either seeking or avoiding touch. You're either avoiding it or seeking it. And so with a child that has, with the clothing issue, okay, I would see that more as avoiding, because they just, and just because you have a sensory issue to touch doesn't mean that you're going to have a sensory issue with your clothing. My daughter didn't have an issue with clothing. She had an issue with socks. All children are different. So, you've got to talk to your child and be observant with the situation and try to figure out what's going on with them. And like you were saying, your child likes the dirty clothes. It might be that he just wants super soft clothing, that the clothing is maybe too stiff for him, or the material might, something with the material. Maybe he needs it to be softer. We didn't personally have that issue, but the people that I have met that do have it, they just find clothing that their children feel comfortable in. And what's killer about it is sometimes they'll wear those clothes and they're okay with them, and then a week later they might not be comfortable in them anymore. And maybe that's because they were washed or something. I really don't know.
Right.
But I do know that, you try not to make your child's sensory issues your issue. So whatever their issue is, you just try to address it. So if they have clothing that they say that they're uncomfortable in and they don't want to wear this, well, okay, here's a whole drawer of clothing that you feel is really comfortable, or here's a box. Pick something from here to wear. So you just don't allow it to become your issue. You don't argue or berate the issue. You just give them the clothing that they can wear and they do feel comfortable in, and you can say, choose something else from your drawer. This one particular drawer is the drawer of all the clothes that you feel comfortable in. Choose something from there.
Gotcha.
Another thing is, like, if your child doesn't like crowds and they have issues with crowds, stay away from crowds. Do whatever it is you need to do. If they have issues with bright lights or the sun, give them a pair of sunglasses. Right. Try not to allow it to be your issue.
Gotcha. So how do you relay this subject in your books? How does it all work with creating children's books? And are your books designed for kids to understand the issue they may have, or is it designed for the parents, or both?
Thank you. That's a great question. Actually, my books are written from Malia's point of view, and she tells a story. And in that, you can also see my frustration as a mother, and you could feel and see Malia's frustration trying to get me to understand. For instance, I'm going to talk about my third book, Jumpaween. That book took place. She was like 3. So far, all the books are true, but there will come a time when I'm going to have to make up stuff because she didn't have every sensory issue, but she had several of them. But during the book Jumpaween, we were having having a hallelujah party at church. At a church setting for Halloween. We have a hallelujah party. So we went in. She wanted to jump on the jumpy. She was real excited, to jump on the jumpy. She was jumping on the jumpy and having a great time jumping on the jumpy. Well, it was time to get off, okay? So there were 2 or 3 people in the line, and she was having such a good time. The workers, they know me. They're like, Jen, just let her stay. She's having such a good time. And because they've seen her not have a good time, So anyway, I was like, okay. So, then there were 10, 12 people in the line. And I was like, Lily, you have to get off. No, she had a fit. It took Larry and I to carry her out of that gym. And, it was awful. The stares, the looks, it was horrible. Horrible. But what's killing about all that, as soon as we walked out the door and shut the door, she stopped. She stopped crying. She stopped screaming. She stopped it all. And it was so shocking because it was like, nothing.
So what about her sensory issue caused?
What it was, I learned later. Well, we went home. I mean, she was quiet and calm. I was like, well, gosh, should I go back in? I was like, no, Jen, that's a dumb idea. So she had to take off her little outfit because it was a horse and it was like a little horse attached. She was a cowgirl. So I had to put that back on. And she walked calmly with me to the car, held my hand. It was over. See, and what I didn't understand was that was sensory overload in there. She was overloaded. It was crowded. It was loud. The lights, the everything. And when I went home, I called one of my teacher friends. Her child's had sensory processing disorder, where they have sensory issues to everything. And so when I was talking to her, she helped me so much, but then she was overloaded when she was, and then later on the therapist explained to me that when she was jumping, she could focus on the jumping, just jump, 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 jump. She could just jump and focus on that. When I pulled her off of that, that's when she could see the lights, she could hear the crowd, all of that. She had nothing to focus on anymore. Because here's the thing, when you have sensory issues to sound, okay, it's like when you are in a crowd, if we are in a crowded room, Angel, and you and I are talking, I can focus on you and you can focus on me. We're able to shut all of that out and focus on one another.
Right.
However, when a person has sensory issues to sound, they hear all of that. I don't know if you've ever seen shows where there's schizophrenic people and all the noises and it sounds like that, it's all put together. That's how it is for them, and it's very painful, very painful. So so that was a learning experience for me. And so, Larry took her trick-or-treating, and after I talked to the therapist, I was like, look, we're going to go to a jumpy place and you can jump all you want. Mama's so sorry, that I, put her in that situation.
Right.
And then also in the book, she was like, well, why is my mommy crying? I wonder if it's because people were staring at us. I didn't really know because I had my Lily let down. And so that's a subtle way of telling people, don't stare, don't talk about people when their kids are acting like this. They're probably acting like this for a reason.
Right.
There's something going on. When it's that dramatic, a lot of times. And they're not crying over candy. It's not like she wanted a piece of candy or a toy.
Right.
And, she just, wanted to jump on the jumpy or, and she just, it's just so much more than all of that. So
I think this is a really good conversation to have. And I applaud you.
You live and learn.
Yes, definitely. And you live, learn in order to help other people learn some new things, because like I said, I applaud you for sharing your story, especially in the Black community, and in the church community too. When we see kids who are not sitting up straight as an arrow, backs as stiff as boards, and dress right dress, and we automatically assume that these kids are just bad, their parents don't have no control over them, and all sorts of things. And not many people have ever heard of sensory issues or sensory disorders. Most people have never heard of these things. And so I think it's a wonderful thing for you to share your story and the story of your daughter, so that people can be a bit more empathetic and at least think, something else could be going on. And like you said, stop staring at folks, or ask mom or dad, is there anything I can do to help? Or, is there something, do you need me to do something or whatever? And the parent may just say, no, my child just, we just have these types of issues, but thank you. I think that hearing your story, reading these books will help people, like I said, to be more empathetic and considerate of other people's, situations, especially when it comes to dealing with their small kids.
Exactly. I know for me, it was very hard. And a lot of times children have, a lot of us, like the food touching, that's a visual sense. A lot of people don't like their food touching. That's a visual sensory issue. Like sometimes it was like they didn't want you looking at them because they're just visually defensive. It's just so much. And sometimes children have a diagnosis of autism or sensory processing disorder or ADHD, dyslexia, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just have issues and their parents just do not know. And I'll tell you something else, Angel. When my daughter was little, we would, she would cry, before we understood that, later she was diagnosed with something called hyperlexia. Like she read early, but then she had, other things going on. But she would, we would have to take her out of church sometimes. And people, it got back to me that someone said, oh, Jen's husband has to take her daughter out of the church all the time. And I was like, are they jealous because their husband's not helping them with their child? I mean, what is it? What is it to you? And why are you commenting on me when you're supposed to be listening to the word of God? Okay. But here's the thing. One time, and one time, it was just hard, and one time this gentleman said to me, he said, Jen, you're a really good mom. You really are. That made my whole week because I struggled. It was a struggle. It was just a struggle. It was really hard. And, once we found out that she had hyperlexia and that, when I found out that she could read at 3, she was reading at 2. And really, when I found out about it, I found out around 2.5. And at 3, I learned that I could use that to help me. So whenever I wrote social stories for her, and when I wanted her to do something, I would turn to the page and point at it. Like I said, I had social studies, how to act in church. When the preacher is preaching, Maria will read her book. Maria will, these things. If Maria needs to talk to mommy, she will, I don't know, will whisper or whatever. I can't remember, but it really helped a lot that she could read at a young age because it helped with the sensory issues and all the issues that we were having at the time.
Right.
So it was definitely a journey.
I know it was. My oldest son, I definitely, now that I have learned more about sensory issues, since I've gotten to know you and your books and Lily's journey, I really believe my oldest, my goodness, he was a screamer and a hollerer for the first 6 months of his life. He just, even as he got older, when you talked about not wanting food to touch, oh my goodness, talk about a tantrum. If his peas touched his rice, that may have touched the chicken, or when I put his plate in front of him, I couldn't add anything to the plate. Once it was in front of him, to touch the plate after that, oh my goodness, it would just be this crazy thing. And I remember how difficult it was because people just was like, he's bad. And I'm like, he's not bad. I don't know what's wrong with him. That was my thing. I don't know what's wrong with my son because I know this behavior is not normal, but I know it's not because he's bad, and I wish that 20 years ago, I had a children's book that I could have read to help me better understand maybe what my child was going through, and maybe even to help him, because I'm sure he probably was confused as to why he was, doing, why things were happening inside of him. So again, I thank you for sharing your testimony in the form of a book, because the rest of us need it. Do you have maybe sort of a last word or some encouragement for a parent or a caregiver of a child who is listening to us and is thinking, that's my grandchild, or that's my niece, or that's my little girl, or whatever? Do you have any words of wisdom, or something you would suggest to them?
I would suggest that they get their child evaluated, because I know, for instance, speaking of the food, I know a child that's 18 and only eats like 10 foods. A lot of people think that their kids are picky eaters, when indeed they have a sensory issue to food. And that's just not good that they only eat 10 foods, So I would definitely seek help, because, and real quick, I know I was discussing my books and sensory issues to someone, and she was saying, I think that's what's wrong with my brother. Well, her brother was like 40, in his 40s, 50s, and he never could really hold down a job. He was very intelligent, went to college, got a degree, but he couldn't really work with people. He struggled all of his life. These sensory issues can be debilitating sometimes. So it's just really sad to me. And I want people to know, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. You just have an issue. There is something, but it can be fixed. It can be worked on. It's not over for you, because if it's not addressed, it's just gonna get worse. Gotcha. It really can.
So listen, everybody, if your child or child you take care of is exhibiting any of these types of things, go take your kid to the doctor, and make sure you ask them about sensory issues, because I don't think most doctors are just out here giving sensory disorder diagnosis. You're probably going to need to mention, like, hey, I heard something about this and it sounds kind of like this, and to bring it, just at least bring it to the table for the physician, to consider. So with that, we have come to the end of our time, Jen. This has been a really great conversation. I know that you have helped some people, and I want people to get these books. And let me just say, they're beautiful, okay? The books are beautiful. The illustrations are beautiful. And I believe all children would just love looking at the pictures in the books, and it is easy reading even for adults. So if you will, please, Jen, let everyone know how they can get a copy of one or all of your books, and how can people get in contact with you?
Yes, please visit my website, www.GinNoonSpaulding, my name, Gin Noon Spaulding. Or also on Instagram at JustGin9807. I'm on Twitter, JustGin. And my email is theadventuresoflily2003 So if you go to my web, and then my books are also on Amazon, Goodreads, and Lulu. Excellent. And Ingram Sparks.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you, Jen. I appreciate you. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I always learn something new when I talk to you. So thank you for sharing your wealth of information about sensory issues with the Speak Up Sis Talk Radio community.
Thank you for having me. You're such a gracious hostess.
You're welcome. Listen, this is that Southern hospitality. You got that Kentucky Southern, and I got that Georgia Southern, but it's all Southern hospitality. All right. And with that, everyone, you all have a beautiful day and be blessed. Bye. Jen, thank you so much for coming into the Speak Up Sis space today and sharing your story and Lily's about living with sensory issues. I really appreciate you, sis. All right, everyone, we're done for the day. I appreciate your time and ear, and I thank you for tuning in to Speak Up Sis Talk Radio, where Christian authors have a chance to share their stories to inspire yours. Visit me online at speakupsis.com and follow me on Facebook at Speak Up Sis Talk Radio and Instagram at angel.charmaine. You can also find me on Twitter at Speak Up Sis. Until next time, have a beautiful day and be blessed. Bye.